Hey everybody, welcome back to the Auction Brief, where I cut through the narratives and the noise to bring you the best auction draft insight and strategy in the business. I'm your host, Drew Davenport, and thanks for joining me for episode 10, the debut of the Shrug Your Shoulders series. Every Monday from now until the start of the season, we're going to talk about specific players that I feel fall into this very specific category. What is a Shrug Your Shoulders guy? Well, simply put, it's a guy that you nominate, and if he gets too expensive, you can shrug your shoulders and move on. It's a guy that you're really not too in love with. Now, I know this sounds easy, but in practice, it's actually quite difficult. It requires you to have not only the pulse of your specific auction draft room, but also the pulse of the fantasy community at large. There are two characteristics of a shrug your shoulders guy. Number one is they can become a consistent producer for your team, either as a top backup or as a starter. And number two, and most importantly, their price is depressed for some reason, either because of an injury the prior year or, more often than not, simply a lack of hype and buzz in the fantasy community. The poster child for the Shrug Your Shoulders series is Jarvis Landry. I tweeted about Landry on August 9th of last summer and said that he was one of my favorite Shrug Your Shoulders guys. He finished as PPR wide receiver 12. How do you end up getting those guys on your team? You have to come up with your own Shrug Your Shoulders list. Bring that list into the auction draft room with you and make sure that you nominate them at the appropriate time. You cannot nominate Landry after 25 wide receivers are off the board, or it simply doesn't work. But if you do that, you can walk away with certain guys that can put your team over the top. Last year, I missed on several of my Shrug Your Shoulders guys, but I also had guys on the list by the name of Kenyon Drake and Lamar Jackson, potential league winners. If you walked out of your draft with a couple of those guys on your team, you absolutely crushed your auction and likely contended for a fantasy title. Thanks for joining me for the beginning of the Shrug Your Shoulders series. We'll have much more in the next 6 weeks.